Good evening, councillors. Thank you very much. I would like to bring to order this Sandwich Town Council extraordinary meeting of the council, and item number 1 is Chair's opening remarks. And on this occasion, as this is an extraordinary meeting, I have no specific extra opening remarks to make, apart from please realise that our interim town clerk is only 3 days a week. She's only 3 days a week. When we get a full-time town clerk, we will have greater staffing ability. We will have a town clerk for 5 days a week, and straight after that we are recruiting for an assistant to both the RFO and the TC. So we'll be recruiting another member of staff that we lost recently. So as the staffing builds up, we will be able to undertake a lot more tasks. But in the current state we're in, please remember the staffing is 3 days a week for the town clerk only. That's all I wanted to say, thank you. Town Clerk, have you got the apologies for absence, please?
I have, Mr Mayor. So we have apologies from Councillor Fortescue due to a travel commitment, Councillor Marie due to a work commitment, Councillor Ungerson due to a travel commitment, and Councillor Gray due to a travel commitment.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, item number 3 is declarations of interest. To receive any declarations of disclosable pecuniary interest from members in respect of business to be transacted on the agenda tonight. Does anybody have any declarations of interest at all? No, so that's none, please. And then item number 4 is the purpose we're here tonight, and it is the KCC Household Waste Recycling Centre review. And this is really a discussion on this part to actually undertake a review of the recent issues to do with the KCC's decision to close the recycling site, and to find the status of the proposal here. So item number 4. So did we have a report from?
I believe that Councillor Suka had a report for this item.
I was going to just give an update to bring everybody
Brilliant,
up to the same
that'd be
point.
fine. Councillor Suka, if you'd like to stand and give your report, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. So Kent County Council, KCC, need to make additional savings of 2.2 million in household waste recycling centres over the next 2 years. 700k of this will be delivered through a range of efficiency measures that they've identified, with the remaining 1.5 million will be delivered through a review of the number and operation of the sites themselves. A review report on how these savings could be made was discussed at the KCC Environment and Transport Cabinet Committee meeting on the 23rd of May. The KCC councillor who presented the report opened her presentation with the words, one simple line, which was, "This is all about saving money." The report includes 3 options in relation to the sites. All of those 3 options include a proposal to close the Richborough site. At the KCC committee meeting, there were strong challenges from a number of councillors there, particularly from those from Thanet, Faversham and Deal, with some objecting to the proposals themselves, so saying that they didn't want to support them, but others were raising issues about a lack of detail in the report that had been presented, and also others were also challenging the absence of any environmental impact statements. The challenges resulted in the consultation not being approved, with a recommendation that the paper was taken back by the author and was redrafted and represented to the next committee meeting, which is on the 5th of July. Now that would suggest that there would then be a further time lag in terms of The consultation period, which is what KCC are proposing, will follow the report. But no, they're still confident they'll still go to consultation within a hair's breadth of the paper being represented. So as things stand at the moment, it will be discussed again on the 5th of July, but with a lot of approvals internally before that discussion. And then their expectations is that the consultation will start on the 12th of July. Sorry, mid-July. I should be any more specific than that. So that's a sort of an overview of where things are up to now. So we're in sort of a quiet period before the outbreak of war as such. But there are activities that some of us have started, some people elsewhere have started, particularly in other parishes, in other towns. So there is activity already starting around the patch. But I just wanted to make a point about social media, and particularly the fact that it's a really useful tool we can use, particularly now, because of course Richborough was under threat of closure back in 2012. Things have moved on. Social media is something that we should harness, and it can be used positively, and it will help us to engage in a campaign with people across Sandwich, but also much further. But what I wanted to point out, it's really disappointing to see a district councillor this morning posting on Facebook to suggest that individuals have been barred from contributing to this meeting. This is a public meeting, as you've already said, indeed, and people have the opportunity to contribute. Sandwich Town Council has not been approached at any point by the said district councillor to get engaged with any effort that might be happening elsewhere. And this is the first time that Sandwich Council has come together today to talk about what it's going to do. So very much today is about hearing from any residents that want to have an input in suggestions on what we might do. It's also deciding how we as a council might tackle this issue, and also particularly how we will collaborate with other parties, other groups, other individuals, more widely than Sandwich, and hopefully have a joined up effort, because a joined up effort will deliver a much better outcome, particularly in comparison with individual strands of work happening in isolation. And I just want to say, as councillors at all levels, we are bound by a code of conduct, and it's incumbent on all of us not to present our own version of council business, and also we all need to make sure we treat all councillors with the amount of respect that they are entitled to.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for that report. That's indeed very good. Thank you for that. Okay. Before we get on to the plenary session, item number 5 is public participation. This is a 15-minute session which is set aside for members of the public to make representations at the meeting in respect of the business that's on the agenda this evening. Individual representations should not exceed 3 minutes. Written notice of the desire to exercise the right to speak, together with the topic that is to be addressed, must be given to the town clerk prior to 1600 hours on the Friday preceding the meeting. Do we have any public speakers?
I didn't receive any requests.
You didn't receive any requests. Thank you for that, Town Clerk. So I'll open up item number 6. Now this will be the plenary session when I will be asking you all to put your ideas forward, put your concerns and issues of how we can address the matter that's before us tonight. Before I actually open the session, I'd just like to put over myself is that obviously, as Councillor Duca said, it's really is a massive topic now, and I brought in the local newspaper that has got a massive full one-page spread on the matter in there. I don't know if you saw also the councillors had access to something called McKinley on Monday, and in that Craig McKinley, our MP for this area, said that he was supporting us in our fight against the closure, and I have sent a letter to Craig McKinley myself personally asking him to support us, and unfortunately there wasn't enough time to ask him here tonight, so that's the problem there. But I've also taken this further over the weekend. I had 2 civic engagements, and at those 2 civic engagements, one of them I met with the Mayor of Faversham, and I had words with the Mayor of Faversham and asked him about the matter, and he said that they're not going to let the matter lie. He said they're pulling out all the stops to work against the closure at Faversham, and he said he would be very pleased to join up, as has been suggested tonight, in any measures to try and get these this decision rectified so that it doesn't come to a closure. So we have got people in other towns. I also met with the Mayor of Deal and also Dover, and they said likewise that this matter would have a massive impact on their particular towns and villages as well. So they said they would be happy to help us as well. So we've got a lot of support for this matter here tonight. So I'm opening the floor tonight. I'm very upset. I may just say one thing. The one thing I'm upset at is the town clerk did invite Councillor Chandler to the meeting tonight, and obviously I was expecting a report from Councillor Chandler on this, and it's a sad thing to say that we do not have our KCC councillor here to support us when we need her the most. So, but I will open the floor to discussion. So these discussions will then, as you see in item number 7, will then be drawn into recommendations that we would take forward. So I'll now open the floor to discussions for anybody that wants to start us off. Councillor Wiles, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think Councillor Shuker made the point at the beginning that the officer report that went to KCC was purely about costs. Didn't include any of the wider costs, purely about saving money because KCC is cash strapped. They're on the verge of bankruptcy, and so they have to save money. And so they presented the proposals. I think it's really important, everyone's making the point that the consideration of this closure needs to take into account wider issues, not just the pure cost, but the wider costs of fly tipping, of additional journeys, and the costs upon households. And the officer report was very narrow. It didn't really take into account any of those wider costs. It didn't include mapping about where journeys might go if Richborough is closed or closed for 2 days a week. So all of those things need to be incorporated into the revised officer report. So I think as a starting point, what we need to be saying to the portfolio lead at KCC, and maybe even the director or the relevant officer, is that your report needs to consider much wider issues than pure cost. And I think that's really the first step, is that when that comes back to committee, those wider costs need to be incorporated into that report. And I think one of the ways of achieving that is for us perhaps to take the lead as the town council that's probably most affected by this, but to write a letter to all of the town and parish councils that are affected, maybe in this immediate area, but across the whole of Kent as well, perhaps, because as you said, Mr. Mayor, Faversham is also affected by this, but certainly within this area we're talking about Deal, Sandwich, Eastry, Ash, Minster, Moncton, Ramsgate Town Council. All of those places are affected. It's not just our campaign, it's a much wider campaign that we need to be thinking about. But making sure that officer report reflects the wider costs, I think, is the very first step that needs to be taken, because when this comes back to the councillors at Maidstone, they need to be thinking not just about our immediate cash issues, but the wider environmental and other costs that are involved. So that's my proposal.
Thank you very much for that. So, and as I say, we'll take proposals in item number 7 for what we're actually going to undertake. At this stage here, if we could just all feed in to different options that are available to us. So, did I see? That's it.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I share your disappointment that our Kent County Councillor isn't present here. It reinforces the feeling that KCC treated us very badly. I think it's disgraceful that we haven't been consulted and involved, and I'm sure we should maybe pass the message to Kent County Council that if they want to talk to us and discuss the way ahead, we would be open to that. I think there are ways in which they might be able to save money without closing the centre. But I think also it passes a message about the importance they attach to recycling. I know there is a lot of scepticism about their role in recycling, and this just makes it worse. And thirdly, I have heard rumours that the deal to sell the site has already been talked about. I really feel this is going behind not only the backs of this council but the public more widely. Sandwich site, Rochester site rather, was visited by over 1,000 people in the period that they chose for their study, which is a fair attendance. Today there were plenty of visitors to it, and it is still widely used. It's still very important. The staff there are extremely helpful, and I would like to pay tribute to them, because every time I've been there they've been extremely helpful and given advice. There are ways in which maybe Kent County Council could consolidate refuse collections and so on, and it may be one way to balance out the inconvenience, but I think closure of the site at Rochester is not something that we can accept. Thank you. Richborough.
Thank you very much, Councillor Pennington. Thank you. Thank you for those words, which are very heartfelt, and obviously you've done your research as well on that, so thank you very much for that. Does anybody else have any other matters? Councillor Mallet, please.
It's just to include the fact that we're looking at a major development at Besshanger, which will increase the traffic on the Sandwich to Deal Road, making it even more difficult to get to Deal. The tremendous developments going on at Westwood, near Westwood Cross, again making it difficult to get from Sandwich to any alternative site in Thanet. And of course, along with, if Manston is developed, there'll be more traffic going on there. So simply saying that we can move to Deal or Thanet is a little bit of a nonsense. Thank you.
Thank you very much. That's very valid points that you raised there. Thank you for that. So, Councillor Ripley.
Just really following on from what Councillor Pennington said about why the Richborough site was the only one mentioned in all 3 options, and is there anything untoward that is at the back of that, really? Because there are a lot of rumours going around, and I wonder if anybody knows for a fact what's going on.
Yeah, of course. That is a good question to ask. Oh, Councillor Tomlins.
Yeah, I'd really like to make a point that we've had a really very recent example of KCC behaving appallingly with going over the heads of Sandwich Town councillors and Sandwich residents and the infant school, with the outcome of selling the schoolhouse for a ridiculous amount of £258,000, which nobody can really make sense of. The way that went about was, there were literally 10 days from the council meeting where Sue Chandler officially came and shared that information. Bearing in mind, within those 10 days there was a bank holiday weekend. There was also an election, so obviously councillors would have been busy and been directed in, with different priorities. That's inevitable. And also the way that they went about, the Dover District Councillor at the time, who apparently shouldn't have been involved in that discussion because he had some interest with governors at the school, actually going against what Sandwich Town Council or Councillor Wiles was suggesting in terms of, the option to pursue whether Sandwich Town Council could purchase and it stinks, it smells, it's very fishy because it's not as if they made a massive financial gain from selling it on the open market, and to treat Sandwich Town Council and Sandwich residents and Sandwich Infant School like beyond irrelevant is just atrocious, and I think we should be very prepared with the timing, and as Councillor Shuke has suggested, that they're not planning to play fair or seek true consultation, and that makes me really angry, and I think it makes a lot of residents and councillors angry.
Thank you very much for that. Councillor Chuka first. Okay. Councillor Chuka.
Yeah, thank you. It's just that KCC had 4 private spots in the sandwich, didn't they? They sold wayfarers, they sold the infant school. We know they was going to move the KCC highway depot to Richborough, that never come off. This looks to me like they want to shut Richborough, move the highway depot down there, because I have seen plans that were drawn up for the architects that did Loop Street. So the next thing we'll have, they've moved the highways to Richborough. They keep the site, I don't think they sell the site. The highways will move to Richborough for the Christian lorries, and then the highways on the Ash Road will then become a building site with about 50 or 60 houses.
Development.
So I think they got an idea to develop the Ash Road highway site.
Thank you, that's very valid. Councillor Chuka this time.
Yeah, just going back to some proposals, capturing some ideas. So one of the things that will add weight to whatever we do is gathering data. So evidence-based arguments are much better, in my opinion, than emotional-based arguments. So there are things that we can do. For example, ourselves, working out within the council and hopefully with contribution from others, gathering data on the environmental impact. Councillor Wiles has already mentioned the things I think we're all acutely aware of, the extra mileage, the potential for fly tipping, and those things should be factored into any response we make. I would also propose that we make requests of KCC, possibly using the Freedom of Information process, to actually get some of the data out of them in terms of what we're doing, because the report that they'll present will be their report, but there may be difficult questions that we want to ask, and there is enough time because responses on FOIs should be made within 20 days. So we might want to do a discrete piece of work and think about the things that we would want KCC to ask in terms of the difficult questions.
Indeed.
Should be easy for them to answer because obviously they built up their proposals based on all the data that they've got available to them. We might also want to develop guidance for residents in terms of helping them, because a lot of this will be individual based consultation, so people can provide their own comments into the process. One set of comments is not the same as 1,000 comments. So I would suggest that we might want to work up some guidance so we can actually say to people, these are the things you might want to factor into any response that you want to give that's your response. And you've mentioned also already about linking up with other bodies like other councils, and that's really good to hear, because I think it's important, because I know it's happening in parallel. Indeed. But we haven't been consulted by one project that is underway somewhere involving things like Zoom meetings with people who are impacted. But as was pointed out already, Richborough is on our doorstep and we are the ones that are majorly impacted. Just one other thing I was going to say, yes, again, evidence-based, we might want to go out to the other sites that are close by and actually take a measure of what they are like. Deal's been mentioned, getting across to Thanet's been mentioned. We might actually want to go out and actually survey. Deal, I've been told, is a very difficult site to get into. So it's evidence-based, or we at least get counterparts from the other councils to give us that evidence, because it informs our responses.
Okay. Thank you very much for that. That's very useful. And I was going to add myself, just before I carry on, I was I spent quite a lot of time, about 3 or 4 years myself, fighting with a very notable ex-councillor from this council, Councillor Dick Perry. And Dick Perry was the chair of the Friends of Wayfarers, and when he released the similar information as we've had just recently to do with Richborough waste and recycling site, Councillor Perry released the information to this council. I remember him the day clearly when he stood up and said KCC has put it on a list of cost savings. At that time they didn't actually call it cost savings. They said it was to introduce better care methods and methodology to the people of the district, and but that went on for about 4 years, the fight to try and stop the closure of Wayfarers. And I can give you a bit of insight of my knowledge from then. We did a petition, we got people to write in to KCC, we had consultation sessions. We had one very large public consultation session in what is the Delph room now, to accommodate all the people that were turning up for it. And it was actually quite embarrassing to see that KCC, as you've said, Councillor Tucker, who actually got their figures, facts and figures wrong, and we questioned the closure of the Wayfarers, and they had their facts and figures about the usage, bed space, and the issue they, Councillor Chanda at the time actually quoted was that there wasn't the ability to actually get en-suite facilities for the elderly that were staying there. And afterwards, many of us, including myself, actually consulted with builders to check on these facts and figures. So what Councillor Tuke is saying is very, very valid, is we need to question everything that KCC are saying. Unfortunately, with Wayfarers, we lost the battle, and despite the consultation and everybody saying that they didn't want Wayfarers to close down, it was on the decision of just one person, the chairman of the social care committee, and that chairman made the decision in the end to close it down. But I do have to say I was very upset because it was actually videoed, was Councillor Chanda was in agreement with the closure of Wayfarers. So after saying at the town council meeting that she would support us to make sure it didn't close, so I'm very upset about that. So did we have Councillor Mallet again?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. It's just to expand on Councillor Chuka's comment and your own with regard to questioning Kent County Council's methods and numbers, in particular with regard to fly tipping. I have no doubt that they will include fly tipping on public highways. We need to make sure that it also includes private land, which might mean going to the NFU and possibly the Police Rural Crime Unit, because that equally costs a huge amount, possibly more than fly tipping on public land.
Of course, yeah, thank you for that. Yeah, that's very valid. Okay then. Right. I wanted to actually also ask the town clerk, sorry to surprise you, perhaps if you had any further advice on this. Have you undertaken any similar schemes yourself in your previous career that may be able to assist us?
I think I think members have actually, scoped it out very well, what is at their disposal, how to approach this. And I do think that obviously any suggestions from residents as well should be taken into account. And I think it is one of those situations where the more you do, the better, and the more people speak up, the better as well.
Thank you very much for that. So, okay, so was there? Oh, Councillor Morehouse, please. Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. You may recall that about a year after the last time this was on the table, as it were, there was a campaign to stop a supermarket being built in the Capital Market car park, and we had a public meeting. So there's posters going up all around the town, inviting people to a public meeting. We then got the officers from DDC and spoke out against it. We would probably need to be prudent to take a similar approach this time, with the poster campaign, petitions, having a public meeting in the Guildhall. We had two. We had one I know the meeting was held in February, it was held in less warmer times than we are at the time, than we are now. But we had a meeting on Wednesday afternoon and on a Friday evening to get people to come along, and on both occasions that hall was packed out with people very upset about the prospect of having a supermarket built on the most accessible car park in the middle of town. And also to bring the people from the KCC down. The person that Councillor Wells suggested, when they made the opening comment about that this is a cost saving, she needs to come, as does our KCC member. And also senior people from DDC, because any fly tipping, the cost of that is going to fall on the district council.
Of course it will. Yeah, of course it will. Councillor Pennington.
Thank you. Just to say that in a previous life, when we had a campaign against a proposal from the district committee to introduce parking charges in the shopping centre, not only did we mobilise, of course, all the shop owners, and local businesses can be very effective actually in working their own networks, but that also we contacted all the councillors on the relevant committee that was taking the decisions. They each received an envelope with the documents that we wanted circulated in there. So we sought to work on their opinions as well.
Very, very valid. That's very useful. That's excellent. Yes, Councillor Green.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to re-echo some of the comments that have been made by some of the councillors, because I'm really concerned about the behaviour of Kent County Council. You know, not only has Councillor Chandler not come along to represent them, but I really feel that they are very dismissive. They completely dismiss a reasonable request to delay the sale of the schoolhouse, a letter from the mayor here, and a petition of over 400 residents. They completely ignored and spurned, and they just stormed ahead. There was no need for them to do that. They could have waited another 3 months to have given interested parties. So it makes me wonder, last month we were talking about the old schoolhouse. This month we're talking about Richborough. What's on the agenda for next month? So we should have sight of the plan, the cost-saving plan that they have. And I think, and we should have sight of all of the data that underpins that. And I'd like to talk about the data underpinning that in a moment. But I think as part of the freedom of information questions that's been asked, I'd like to understand the incentive bonuses that the leaders of Kent County Council will earn if these cost savings are achieved.
Indeed,
you know,
that's correct.
And we talked about kind of working together with some of the other councils who are having closures. What are the determining or tipping factors that means that Richborough must close? Why can't it be made available for a few days a week? So we need to understand the tonnages of waste, the haulage, because you know, it may be that Richborough operates in a very effective manner, but the haulage of the waste to landfill is further from Richborough than other places, and that's just a consequence of geography. So, you know, there's nothing that we can do about that. We need to understand there's the same data for the other councils so that we can compare and contrast why Richborough is being deemed in all of the three options to be a failure or a closure site. So we need to understand how that compares with the other sites where they're going to keep them open for a few days a week. So, you know, for me, we really need to understand that. And I'd like clarification as to who is the ultimate decision maker here, because it just feels to me that Kent county council have already made the decision,
Yeah.
and doesn't matter about those people in Sandwich. They've got plenty of food or sandwiches on their table. Let them get on with it. And then, if we've got to go to Deal, what's the road traffic impact? We need a road traffic study to show the impact of the road. But what really, what annoys me is that when they closed Richborough School, the school said that they were oversubscribed for the following year. They really needed the space. And it's the same argument that's been put forward about all of these new housing developments up at Westwood Cross and so forth and around. All of those houses will need the facility. And so there's a future demand, but doesn't seem to figure in Kent's County Council way of thinking. Because the school was oversubscribed and they ignored that. The fact that there's going to be a lot more houses and a lot more demand for the waste. And the demand for the waste is not going to go away. And so it's just going to get fly tipped, it's going to get rammed into bins, or people are going to have to travel further, causing a lot more dangerous, CO2 carbon footprint processes. So I really would like to know who is the ultimate decision maker, because we should already be making plans, to challenge them if the ultimate decision maker is a minister for environment and waste in County Council who stands to make a substantial bonus for doing that. Because how can we all have to come to this meeting and stand back if we feel we've got a pecuniary interest? How can these people that can do different?
Exactly. Thank you very much for that, Councillor Green. Councillor Wallace, was you? Councillor Black.
Yeah, I'm just concerned about a couple of things about timing. I looked at the first part of the video of the KCC meeting, and the chair was quite clear, said, I'm not taking petitions at this time. Now, we have to make a decision, which is how hard and how much do we go in before their next meeting, or do we wait for consultation? I think that we need to go in very hard before the next meeting. I do think we need to make it crystal clear to the members of that committee, as some colleagues have suggested, this is why we're opposed to it, these are the facts that are supplied, and I think we have to get an FOI in PDQ, because otherwise it'll be the usual thing, oh well, yes, we're 12 weeks consultation, you've plenty of time. That is nonsense. They will have made a decision by then, unless we are very careful. And the other point is, I think we really have to push this thing about what are they going to do with the land at Richborough? That is the critical decision. And that should be part of an FOI, I suggest.
I've got to go turn my phone on.
Oh, okay. Okay. Thank you very much. Councillor Lars, did you still wish to speak?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. A couple of points that have already been discussed, but at the heart of this is KCC and the way they operate, and their lack of openness, their lack of effective public consultation. You remember when they consulted on the booking system for the Richborough tip? The results of that were far from conclusive, and yet they stuck with the booking system. And as a result of that, the numbers have gone down. It discriminates against people who don't have internet access. And now, it's a classic strategy. You reduce demand and then you close.
Exactly.
And that's exactly what they've done. But they have previous on this with Wayfarers, where that property's had a for sale sign up for the last 2 years almost.
Oh, yeah.
And we've been given no information about what's happening with it. There's a planning application gone in for allegedly its change of use to for autistic adults, but we don't know anything about, is the property being sold, is it being let, what's the terms of the deal. The schoolhouse was sold without any effective consultation. So this is the key thing. It's this lack of openness about the way they operate, and it's just treading all over the people locally. I mean, coming back to the tip, Richborough is probably the most accessible tip. It's easy to get into and out of. People from Ramsgate come there from all over this area. it's much easier to get to than the Margate one or the Deal one. And the Deal one is really inaccessible. So we need to bear all these things in mind, but I think we have to attack this on all fronts, petitions, letters, etc. But for me, the key thing is that officer report.
Yeah.
Because the councillors will only make a decision based on what's in that report.
Exactly.
And we need to make sure that all of these extra costs are included in that report, so the councillors are not just looking at pure financial issues for KCC, but the wider issues of fly tipping, which becomes a district council responsibility.
Exactly.
It becomes a responsibility for farmers, where it's dumped on their land. So all of these wider public bodies and other stakeholders need to be involved in that discussion, in that officer report. So that's why I'm saying I think all of us, all of the district and parish councils in this area, or the whole of Kent even, need to write to the portfolio holder as a first step to make sure that that officer report takes on board those wider costs, because that's critical.
So did you want to come back, Councillor?
Yes, I seem to remember in that video of KCC, they had almost the equivalent of a public participation session. The first person that spoke was not a county councillor, or at least not on that committee. If that is the case, we need to find out if it is. And secondly, we have to get people there. So we need to get that application in very quickly, and we need to find the most eloquent of our speakers. It ain't me.
Councillor Tomlin?
Yeah, I just wanted to add, and I had it in my brain, so sorry I wasn't picking up my old messages, I was looking for the article. There was an article in Kent Online in March and relating to the proposal to close 35 children's centres and reorganise the health visiting service, which is something quite dear to my heart. And one of the quotes directly from KCC, which I think is really shocking, KCC has said that it has a backlog of approximately 165 million in maintenance costs required across its estate, with the proposed changes forecast to save the council around 6.9 million. So what have they been doing with our money, really? This is, this is maladministration.
Exactly.
Could be.
Exactly.
Because we pay significant amounts of money, and it's shocking. If their backlog of maintenance repairs, why has that come to be like that? That they're so desperate that they are selling off the family silver, which they did with Wayfares and they've done with the schoolhouse. And I agree with Councillor Breen that what is next? I really feel that that's a real threat to us.
Indeed. I think you've got a good point there, Councillor Tomlins, because just from my own personal experience, I went through in 2012, Kent County Council went through a large number of restructures, and I was a casualty of one of those restructures. So they were collectively moving staff from outer and rural centres back into main city centres to work, and they were cutting back on staffing. They were looking for voluntary redundancies, etc., like that. Now I'm talking about 2012. They were trying to cut back in 2012, and that was really before the increased immigration of the small boats and things like that. So actually what you're saying, Councillor Tomlinson, is correct in that it is really maladministration and management, because I'm talking about 11 years ago, and they're still in the same position now as they were 11 years ago. So
I think with the practical details, that's so important, that we need to know the figures.
We do.
Because I wasn't aware of this until I read the article, and it's very specific, and they know what degree of savings and at what cost to children's centres, early intervention and health visiting services that they now run.
Exactly. Thank you very much for all that. It's been so nice this evening to have so many councillors get up and address the issue, and from so many different sides and different aspects of it. That's been fantastic. And what I said in the in the annual town council meeting, I think applies very validly tonight, that I've got a whole lot of very good brains working away to the benefit of the local residents in Sandwich Town itself. So I thank you very much for all your input tonight. That's been absolutely fantastic. I'll go on to item 7. Now, item 7 will be a summary of this discussion and agreeing our next steps and what we're supposed to do. And call me very unusual, but I used to work for the intelligence services, and I used to be an analyst. And from what's come up tonight, I've actually got this down into 2 actual divisions of fault. And I've got here, down here, is the 2 divisions which we can break up our battle onto. Is one is what we don't know, so it's the information that we need to know. So this is going into item number 7, so if you need to assist me with this, please put your hand up if that's okay. But so for instance, what we don't know would be the issues of like submitting an FOI. So that's one of those ones there. Then there was other issues for what we didn't know of who was the major decision maker, wasn't it? And then the items of what we do know would be the items of, we've got the dates of the committee, we've got the dates, we know from the 3 options that Richborough, quite strangely, in all 3 options is put down to close. And so really we need to know, so we know what's happening about that. And we know there is a consultation, and without prejudging any consultation, democratic consultation, many of us in this room tonight have spoken out and said we've taken part in previous consultations and the result has been exactly the same as prior to that consultation. So what I'm asking for tonight, I've underlined a few items which I was going to put forward. So one of the things I think we definitely need to do immediately, I think, because as far as I'm concerned, we haven't actually put forward that Sandwich Town Council is actually objecting or against this. So I was going to say one of the first things would be a letter that is sent through to the chair of the committee that's making the decision on this, to say that we do object and we will be submitting a report that needs to go into their report for that meeting on the, I think it was at the 5th of the 7th, wasn't it there? So please interrupt me if I get this wrong. So I would suggest a letter to the chair of the committee first of all, then the FOI, and then the other matters that I had there was the other item that I was going to bring up, wasn't it? We've got the FOI there. Oh, it was to do with setting up the public meeting. It was suggested about a public meeting to set that up, asking for DDC and KCC councillors to come along to that one. And that would bring in the talks with the KCC there. And then we also had one very valid thing, which I think was very clever, was Councillor Black said about speakers for the meeting on the 5th of the 7th. So booking public participation for that meeting. I'll now open, does anybody else wish to add to this? Councillor Black, please.
Yeah, may I say also that, yes, we have to write to the chair of this particular committee. I think that is too restricted circulation. This needs to go to the leader of Kent County Council.
Indeed.
But it needs to be copied into our MP and our MP for the future, after the boundary change.
Of course.
They really need to start acting not in a partisan way, which seems to be the case so far, but in a civic way.
Indeed, that's correct. Councillor Morehouse.
Regarding the MPs, you need to write to 3 MPs. Yes. Councillor Beverley Offick, McKinley and Sir Roger Garland.
Thank you for that. we also need, and I'd like to have somebody, whether somebody would lead this, but we need somebody who can actually lead on doing some of the research on this to bring some of this information together. I don't know, Councillor Wiles, are you volunteering?
In terms of freedom of information, I'm not, the town clerk might correct me, I'm not sure a town council can make a freedom of information request to a county council.
So certainly it's not normal for the town
It's
councils
an
to do that. It's normally the residents
An
that
individual.
do that. Yeah.
So I think, certainly freedom of information request should be made. The key one for me would be to KCC, because the Ash Road site has been in the local plan for some years as a residential site, plus maybe a coach park. So we need to know. I'm not aware that any public discussion has been made about where the Ash Road site, the gritting site, will be relocated to.
No.
But the suspicion is that because we're in all of the options, that proposal is to move it from there to Richborough. So we need a freedom of information to say what discussions have taken place about moving the Ash Road site to Richborough.
Yeah.
That's number one.
Yeah.
But I come back to my key proposal, which is that we write to all the town and parish councils in this area, asking them to also lobby the portfolio holder to make sure that council officer's report is better written and reflects the wider costs.
Thank you for that, indeed. Okay, so we've got quite a few items down here. As I said, Councillor Chuka? Oh, Councillor Pennington then. If you're prepared.
Thank you. If we are to produce a report, I would be wary of expecting the KCC staff to reflect the findings of that report fairly in anything they produce. I think if we are to produce a report, it should go direct to the decision makers and not be filtered by KCC.
Indeed, I agree that. That's very wise words from somebody that's obviously been in the council business for a long time. That quite often cropped up at DDCs. Councillor Chuka?
The only point I was going to make is whether we need to expand a little bit in terms of how we tackle this. So some of the activities you mentioned are parallel, so it's not sequential.
No.
Because time is tight. We might spend 12 weeks plus the lead-in time. It's not that long.
No.
But on the point particularly around FOIs, if we are able to get enough interest from our community, the potential for setting up an action group, which would include residents, then gives the avenue into KCC from residents in terms of getting the information that we would all want to use. So, there are ways that you can overcome some of these hurdles that might normally prevent us doing the things that we do want to do, because ultimately we're trying to service and support our community in this. It's not about us as a council. There are only 16 people in here. We have been running a petition already. And there are 1,200 names on that petition, so it does show that there are, the response out there is there, but we need to harness that in maybe a bit more of a bridled manner and do as best we can, even if the outcome, as some suggest, might be the outcome we already expect.
Indeed. Councillor Black?
Can I just understand a bit more about the FOI? The town clerk has said it's very unusual. I suspect it's very unusual. It hasn't been done. I've set up a council sending an FOI request. But correct me if I'm wrong, you could have 16 FOIs from one from each councillor, could you not?
Indeed.
Whether they're the same or whether they're different is another matter.
But
that strikes me as something that's more effective if we're unable to do so as a council.
I do, yeah, that's a very good idea, Councillor Black, because I was actually going to suggest myself, if the town clerk said that it was inappropriate for Sandwich Town Council to put the FOI in, I've written down here that I would actually submit it myself under my own name to Kent County Council. But what would be better than one private individual, that's myself when I'm outside of this council chamber, submitting it, as to 16 submitting it. So that is a very good idea. That's excellent. So as I said, my last matter was I think based on what I said, sorry, Councillor Whitcomb, or sum up.
Just really to suggest that we need to have a public meeting ASAP to put everything that we're saying to the public, to the community, and get them on board and get them included in all of this and getting them taking action.
Of course.
And with posters out and everything that we can do, we need to blitz it.
Yeah, of course, yeah. The matter with the public meeting, of course, is we would need to ask for these members of KCC to attend, so we would have to rely on their availability, unfortunately. Please.
We could have more than one public meeting if they decided they weren't going to attend.
Indeed.
We could have a public meeting and then invite them to the next one.
Indeed, excellent. Councillor Morehouse.
To remember that the people behind, I think this met, the important to remember the people behind this decision are our servants.
Indeed.
Our masters.
That's correct. That's correct. That's a very valid point.
And also to talk about belt and braces approach. Very good, all 16 of us submitting these FOI requests, but regenerating the Richborough Action Group of reaching out to someone like Jeff Loftman, who previously organised the last campaign. So we've got the belt and braces approach, the joined up approach from the Richborough Action Group, along with 16 approaches from us councillors.
Indeed, thank you very much.
Just on that point, I have had a personal meeting with Jeff, Councillor Jeff Loftman already, and from his perspective, he will do whatever he can to help us. I mean, he's not going to get involved in our campaign, but they've got their own issues with what's been proposed, so that's definitely one area that we might want to join up with.
Thank you for that, that's very useful. And Councillor Breen,
I think earlier, Mr Mayor, I think you mentioned the Mayor of Faversham and the Mayor of Dover, was it? And there was another one. But I think all of the councils, all of the town councils will have a lot of common themes that they will be making when objecting to this. And I think, one of the actions should be to positively liaise with the other councils and collaborate. I'm a great believer in collaboration, and we should collaborate with them so that we're all looking at the same data and so forth, because this is one of the tactics I feel that KCC are using. They're not comparing apples with apples.
Indeed, that's correct. Okay, I'd like to sum up now to say that we've had a very good discussion tonight. I think there's been very valid and professional input, and I think that what we've started, the glimmer of this new hope to try and dispose this closure of Richborough recycling site is very strong, and I think that if we can build on that, we can take this forward correctly. What I'll do is obviously the town clerk will be producing minutes for this evening. Thank you very much for that. And then what we will do is we will set some dates, primarily for the public meeting. To initially, I'm very strong in getting this letter out. At the moment, Kent County Council doesn't know or realise how strong we feel against this. So the letter must go out very quickly, and the FOIs. What I'll be saying is that I will be calling on all of you via email and other means to actually have an input into this. As we said when we started this council on the 4th of May, this isn't about one person. So it's not about the mayor or the council, it's about 16 elected individuals having an input into this. So I will be expecting all of you to assist with research or information. If people are travelling, if somebody's going to one of the other sites, if somebody's travelling over to Thanet, if they were able to go to the Margate site, take photographs, talk to people, anything like that, I would just ask that everybody does whatever they can to get as much information. So as I said, what we don't know, we need to know. We need to know about tonnages. We need to know about the roads into the Deal and the Margate site. Are they restricted access? How many cars can get in there? How often do you queue? I quite often use the Deal site, and I quite often queue on the slip road outside the people's houses. Now that's another pollution and environmental issue there. If those people have got children living in those houses, that's detrimental to those children's health. And we need to get all of these ideas down. So I'll be asking Jill to actually put forward a new folder of information on our server, and all this, whenever you have any knowledge, information, photographs or any data, please share it with myself and the town clerk so that we can get all this information together. I think the most important thing will be the actual report that we send in, and as was said tonight by Councillor Pennington, we won't be sending the report to the officers who can doctor it before it gets there on for the meeting on the 5th of July. We'll send it to those that have got the power to make the decisions. So thank you very much for that. As I say, the minutes will come out and then we will progress things as we go on from there. Does anybody have any other matters to raise before I close the meeting? Councillor Wiles.
So I come back to the point I keep making, which is we do need to write an email or a letter now to all of the town councils and parish councils in this area. Because that officer report is being written right now.
Exactly.
We can't wait another week or 2 weeks. We have to. So I think this meeting tonight, I'm happy to draft, perhaps with Councillor Zuka.
That's what I wanted. That's what I wanted.
Volunteering.
The volunteers stood up.
Thank you. Draft that, and maybe that could go out in the next couple of days. If this meeting agrees to that initial approach.
Indeed.
It's just the first step. There's lots of other things to
do. There are a large number of tasks,
critical.
so thank you for that, Councillor Wiles. That's important. That's exactly what I wanted, Councillor Wiles, was so for instance, if I take on the FOI and start drafting the FOI, if you could take on the letter to the other councils, that would be most useful there. Thank you. Councillor Black.
Yes, thank you, Smith. We've talked a great deal about other civic bodies such as the councils. However, there are many organisations that are also interested in this. Some are political parties, and obviously we have to be very careful to have neutrality here. But there are other things, I think like Friends of the Earth, the Green Party and so on.
CPRE.
We haven't, sorry?
CPRE.
CPRE, thank you. What are we going to do about them? Because they are a very valuable resource, and I do think we need to reach out to them as well. Yes, the civic groups are vital, but so are these other groups, and I suggest we also need, in our plan, have a clear method of bringing them into the body of the code.
Indeed. Thank you very much for that. I've included that in here as well. Okay. As I say, I think we've had a very, very strong and very positive meeting tonight on this. We can take all this forward, and if everybody can input into this, we can get started on this straight away. So Councillor Wiles, I'll hopefully be hearing from you soon on your letter. I'll be starting on the FOI, and if we can all input onto this, this would be fantastic. And I'll be liaising with the town clerk to set up the public meeting later this week when the town clerk's in office. So I'd like to close this meeting. The date of the next full council meeting is the 26th of June 2023. Thank you for your input tonight.
I'm bringing my